Hi guys, it's me, ChazzaHD, and welcome tonight to this preview for this weekend's 2022 Canadian Grand Prix. Hopefully you guys are doing well ahead of the return to Montreal. Of course, this circuit has been on the calendar since, I think, 1976 or 77. So it's been, a great race on the calendar for so many years, and it is fantastic to be going back to Canada. And last 2 years, obviously, COVID was the reason why we couldn't go back to the Canadian Grand Prix. The last 2 or 3 Canadian Grand Prix haven't been amazing, but if you look at, some of the best Canadian Grand Prix of all time, they also feature as some of the greatest Grand Prix of all time. So there is definitely a possibility of a pretty exciting race this weekend. Some surprises, probably. Hopefully, we get some surprises. Obviously, some rain would be absolutely fantastic, but I think definitely we're going to have a very exciting weekend. Obviously, it's a shorter lap, the Circuit de Gilles Villeneuve, so the gaps between all the cars will be closer, meaning all the battles throughout the field will be even more exciting than normal. And I think we should get, like I said, a pretty exciting Grand Prix this Sunday, and I think the whole weekend will be pretty interesting and exciting as well. Even the practice sessions, where I think we'll see some very exciting pace, let's say, from certain drivers, especially in the midfield, because this circuit is, I would say, a driver's circuit. And what I mean by that is, around these type of circuits, the driver can make more of a difference than around a track, for example, like Baku. So, yeah, I think this is definitely going to be in the midfield, a very, very exciting Grand Prix. And even at the very front of the grid, with, Ferrari and Red Bull, I have no doubt it'll be another very close fight for victory in Canada. By the way, just want to say, hopefully you guys are doing well, no matter what time it is in your part of the world, hopefully having a good day. With the bottom ticker, I know there are still some old stats there from the Baku Grand Prix. I forgot to replace them or, to put in some stats for the Canadian Grand Prix coming into this weekend. I have some stats I'm going to be showing throughout the stream, so don't worry, I'll get to that. But yeah, sorry about a couple of the stats there on the bottom ticker. I just haven't updated it in time, so yeah, sorry about that. I'll make sure to update it before the sessions start tomorrow evening here in the UK, of course. But before we get on to previewing this weekend's Grand Prix, we have had a big news story come out in the last 2 or 3 hours, and it's going to be very important for this weekend's Grand Prix, but is important regarding the season going forward from this point, and it has to do with the porpoising. And the FIA have finally decided to take a step in resolving the porpoising or reducing the porpoising issues in the interests of safety. That's what they say. So I'm going to quickly show this on screen, this FIA statement. It says here, the FIA takes steps to reduce porpoising in the interest of safety. And this is what they had to say. A technical directive has been issued to give guidance to the teams about the measures the FIA intends to take to tackle the problem. These include, number 1, closer scrutiny of the planks and skids, both in terms of their design and the observed wear. And secondly, the definition of a metric based on the car's vertical acceleration that will give a quantitative limit for acceptable level of vertical oscillations. The exact mathematical formula for this metric is still being analysed by the FIA, and the Formula 1 teams have been invited to contribute to this process. In addition to these short-term measures, the FIA will convene a technical meeting with the teams in order to define measures that will reduce the propensity of cars to exhibit such phenomena in the medium term. And then it says, finally, with this final paragraph, the FIA has decided to intervene following consultation with its doctors in the interest of the safety of the drivers in a sport where the competitors are routinely driving at speeds in excess of 300 kilometers an hour. It is considered that all of the drivers' concentration needs need to be focused on the task and the excessive fatigue or pain experienced by a driver could have significant consequences should it result in a loss of concentration. And obviously, because of the health concerns, that's why the FIA are trying now to sort this out. So I'll just quickly cut back to this. So essentially what they're doing is they're going to take a much closer look and inspection of the actual underneath of the car to make sure the teams are not running their cars in terms of the flaws in a way that could be dangerous for the drivers when it comes to the porpoising. But secondly, what it said there, the definition of a metric that will give a quantitative limit for acceptable level of vertical oscillations, otherwise known as porpoising. Basically, what they're saying is they're going to set a limit for how low you can run your car, and based on what's reasonable and what's not. And if any team during Friday practice is found to be bouncing a bit too much, then the FIA will tell that team to raise their car's ride height. Just going to quickly get up this tweet from Toby Grunner, who talks about it briefly on Twitter. So let me get that up. Here he says that he has got their hands on, Auto, Motor and Sport have got their hands on the technical directive and tell you all the details. New porpoising limits will be set before FP3. If a team can't supply a setup deemed to be safe, they have to raise ride by 10 millimeters. The car will be disqualified if still above the limit. So basically, they will allow the teams to still run their car low to the ground, but they have to also set the car up in a way that limits the bouncing. But if they can't put a setup like that on the car that can, reduce the bouncing, the excessive bouncing down the straights or in fast corners, then they'll have to raise the ride by 10 millimeters. And for the teams that will have to do that, if they can't, provide a setup for the car that doesn't mean they have to raise the car, that will seriously affect those cars. Let me just see if I just go to this article quickly. What if I can get an English translation? Let me refresh the page. Sometimes in the top left or top right here, it will show translation or something, but doesn't appear that there is a translation at the moment. But well, maybe later in the weekend I'll read this on stream. But yeah, I think pretty simple. The new directive, if you can't set your car up to be safe enough when it comes to bouncing up and down the straights or in the fast corners, then you have to raise your ride height by 10 millimeters. If you don't, then you're automatically disqualified. Seems to me to be, I think, the fairest and most sensible approach I think the FIA could have took. I don't think they should have, and thankfully they haven't gone in a way of possibly redesigning the cars, because these cars were specifically designed to create the best type of situation for these cars to follow better. So that would be a massive negative if they had to go back on that. But also, the teams that are not suffering as badly with porpoising, such as Red Bull, they shouldn't be punished because they've designed their car in a more efficient way that doesn't porpoise down the straights and lose them time, with that happening. They should not be punished, and any other team that has it better off in that instance should not be punished for that issue. So I am, like I said, I'm happy that they've come to that conclusion, and that is the technical directive. And I think going forward, it should be a good solution. Maybe not the overall best solution that can be found, but as a temporary measure, I think that's really pretty good from the FIA then. Like I said, I think it's really the best and most sensible conclusion they could have come to. So yeah, there you go. Obviously, the teams that porpoise more than others, such as Mercedes and Ferrari, will be affected quite a bit by that new technical directive, because if they're, bouncing too hard and they can't put a setup on the car to limit it enough, they're going to have to raise their car, and that's going to lose you performance. The higher your car is with these cars, higher your car is off the ground, the less downforce you're going to have, and obviously you're going to be slower. So the teams are going to have to really work extra hard with these cars to get the right setup that's comfortable enough for the drivers when it comes to porpoising through fast corners and the straights. So be interesting to see tomorrow. Obviously, I'm covering practice 1 and practice 2 with watch-alongs on the channel tomorrow. Be interesting to see how much porpoising there is tomorrow, and whether the teams have a, now that technical directive has come out, maybe the teams will be able to put some sort of a preset setup on the car that they know will limit the effect of porpoising to a certain degree. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens there. But let me know, guys, in the comments section and the live chat, what do you think of that technical directive by the FIA? Do you think it's good enough? Does it not go far enough? Just let me know what you think of it, and whether it's a good, sensible solution, or, like I said, something better could be done in that aspect. So yeah, let me know in the live chat. And this is a reminder, not just for this part of the stream, but for the whole stream. If you post a comment in the chat and I don't read your comment out because I forget to, or I just don't have the time to, then make sure to post it in the comments section, and I'll make sure to get to it probably by the end of the weekend. I'm probably going to show it on stream and, go through a load of them that I've seen pile up this week, and answer them to the best of my ability. But yeah, if I can't answer your comment in the live chat, then make sure to post it in the comments, and that'll be absolutely fine. Now, let's get on to previewing the Canadian Grand Prix. Now, before we get to the teams, because we haven't been here for 3 years and we may have some new viewers, let's get on to the track layout here in Montreal. Pretty fast circuit, some very heavy stops around the circuit as well in terms of braking, but it is a very fast racetrack as well. So from the final chicane of turn 13 and 14, you come down the pit straight, and DRS can be enabled down that straight as well. 3 DRS zones here in Montreal as opposed to the 2 in Baku. So in terms of overtaking, we should definitely get plenty in a dry race this weekend. So yeah, pretty fast straight down to turn 1, which is, in qualifying, a pretty fast corner. In the race, obviously, it becomes more of a medium speed corner, but in qualifying, it's a pretty fast left-hand turn 1, and then you go straight into what is effectively, in turn 2, a hairpin. Very slow right-hander. Also, the exit of the corner, very important when it comes to traction and getting a good exit, because if you get a poor exit, I think we've seen in the past, drivers blow qualifying laps by getting just not great exit from turn 2, and then you come into a short little straight down to turn 3 and 4, a fast downhill chicane. Of course, that is where Sebastian Vettel famously, or infamously, however you want to say it, went across the escape road and cut turn 4 and joined on the exit of turn 4 and got a penalty for dangerous driving against Lewis Hamilton, which I personally disagree with, but that's what happened that particular day. And then you go from turn 4 into turn 5, which is a flat-out right-hander, and then that's the end of the first sector. And then into turn 6, pretty slow left-hand corner, and then into turn 7, it's a right-hand turn that starts off slow but gets progressively quicker as you go through it, as you accelerate onto a second DRS straight. Also, traction is very, very important on the exit of turn 7, and we have seen plenty of drivers go into the wall on the exit of turn 7 as well. And then, like I said, second DRS straight in between turn 7 and turn 8 in the second sector. Then turn 8, you brake under the bridge, and then you come into a, say, medium speed right-hand corner, and then it's another, say, chicane-like part of the track, turn 8 and 9. You have to make sure, really, through turn 9 that you don't oversteer on the middle or slash exit of that corner, because if you do, you'll be in the wall on the right-hand side. And then you enter a short little straight that curves to the left to turn 10, which is a hairpin, and that starts the final sector. And yeah, turn 10, slowest part of the circuit, obviously exiting a hairpin, very, very important. And then you begin the longest power section of the circuit. Turn 11, obviously, is just a small kink, and then you go through turn 12, which is a small kink as well. And yeah, onto the longest DRS straight of the track. Down to the final chicane. Obviously, plenty of victims have been seen from that chicane over the years at turn 13 and 14. And obviously, the exit at turn 14 is the Wall of Champions, where back in 1999, we had, who was it? Michael Schumacher, Jacques Villeneuve, and Damon Hill, was it, all in the same race? Who crashed in that wall, I think it was. So, yeah, you have also that famous corner. And then, yeah, once you exit, if you do somehow manage to get through the chicane, you then get took on to another lap. Now, we have seen here, not just in the last few years in the hybrid era, but really since probably the 90s, I guess you could say as well, that cars with also, cars, that do have good aerodynamic grip, but really cars that have tremendous straight line speed are normally the type of cars that go well here. The last time we raced here in 2019, Ferrari, even though they finished way behind Mercedes in the championship, and they obviously did not have a car as good as Mercedes that season, ended up on pole position here, and Vettel did cross the line in first place, but obviously Hamilton got the win because Vettel had a penalty for that dangerous driving that he did, well, according to the FIA steward. So, yeah, this track, like I said, because of really, the part of the track from, say, turn 7 to the start-finish line, it's pretty flat out. I mean, the only real corners you have to deal with is turn 8, turn 9, turn 10, and the final chicane. It's going to suit cars that have a very good top-end speed. Obviously, the less you porpoise, that'll help very much with that as well. I think as well, we will get, because of the, because of how quicker the lap is compared to most tracks on the calendar, because of the way the first sector is, cars that, lean more in the direction of being better in the corners won't fare, too bad here. So, for example, a team like Ferrari in the first sector will probably be the quickest out of any team this weekend. But the problem for those teams is, can they produce enough pace in the second and final sector in a straight line to limit the amount of time they're going to lose to other teams that have very good straight line speed? So, yeah, Red Bull and Ferrari, they should do equally. Well, not equally as well here, but they will both be very quick and close to each other at this Grand Prix. I do think, though, for the race, that Red Bull will be very, very quick here and have probably the best car. And also with Ferrari having their porpoising problems and that new FIA technical directive, if Ferrari are bouncing quite a bit, then it could affect their speed this weekend, as it could for other teams. Also for Mercedes, if their porpoising is happening quite a bit, they really could have a poor weekend here in Canada. I don't expect Mercedes to really have that quick of a car this weekend, because this track is just not a track that this type of Mercedes car is going to go well at. Also, it is quite a bumpy track, obviously very old, this circuit to Gilles Villeneuve. And then other cars that will go well here, probably the AlphaTauris, the Alpines. And we'll see if, any other team can throw a surprise. Maybe Aston Martin, but definitely teams like McLaren also, I think, will struggle around this circuit. Not in the first sector. The first sector, McLaren will be probably pretty quick, but Sector 2 and Sector 3, I think McLaren are going to be in for a very tricky time against their midfield rivals. So that is the Montreal track, the Circuit de Gilles Villeneuve, of course named after the Canadian legend Gilles Villeneuve, father of Canadian world champion Jacques Villeneuve. And yeah, great to be back here, and hopefully it's going to be a great Grand Prix this weekend. Now, before I get onto the teams and get more talking about them individually, let me just get into the championship standing. So Max Verstappen comes into this weekend leading the championship by 21 points from teammate Sergio Perez. Charles Leclerc down to third after his non-finish in Baku, and is 34 points behind. And yeah, like I said, coming into this Grand Prix a few days ago, Charles Leclerc and Ferrari have to win this Grand Prix. There is absolutely no excuses coming into this race. If they don't win this weekend, and Verstappen, can get the win, and God forbid they get another 1-2, then it is probably, considering this new directive that's come out, that it's probably going to affect Ferrari more than Red Bull. And also, Red Bull are a better team than Ferrari and produce better results. And now that Red Bull have improved the pace of their car in the last few races, they are definitely the team to beat. It'll probably mean that the championship is over if they don't get victory this weekend, or at the very least, they don't beat Verstappen. They have to at least, with Leclerc, beat Verstappen in this Grand Prix, which obviously doesn't necessarily mean, if they don't win the race and beat Verstappen, doesn't necessarily mean that it will be a bad result. In fourth place, George Russell. Fifth, Carlos Sainz. Sixth, Lewis Hamilton. Seventh, Lando Norris. Eighth, Valtteri Bottas. Ninth, Esteban Ocon. And 10th is now Pierre Gasly, who I think will be pretty quick this weekend. And in the Constructors' Championship, Red Bull leading now by 80 points over Ferrari. The Constructors' Championship, I think, is pretty much wrapped up. And yeah, Ferrari second. Mercedes closing in massively at the last Grand Prix in third. So Ferrari have got to get their act together, because if Mercedes get their act together soon enough, it could be very tricky for Ferrari going forward. And then you've got McLaren fourth, who are 18 points clear of Alpine in fifth. Then Alfa Romeo sixth. Obviously, Alpine overtook Alfa Romeo in the Constructors' Championship at the last Grand Prix. AlphaTauri closed the gap to the two ahead of them in seventh. And then it's Haas eighth, Aston Martin ninth, and then Williams in 10th place. So those are the championship standings to remember coming into this weekend's Grand Prix. Now, let me get into the teams, and we'll start with the Red Bull team. We're going to start, by the way, with the Red Bull team from now on when it comes to, previews and reviews and, stuff like that, because obviously Red Bull now pretty clearly in the lead of the championship and the team to beat. Obviously, you saw Ferrari first ahead of Red Bull. And yeah, after Baku, 1-2 finish, they are looking very, very good. And I think they will be very, very good this weekend. I don't think they'll necessarily be on pole position, but I think definitely they will have the car to beat, and they'll be the team to beat in the race, because of that straight line speed they have around this circuit. I think it will benefit them quite a bit. Wouldn't be surprised at all, to be honest, if they did get pole position, because they've been very, very good in the last few races. Not the greatest in qualifying in terms of pace, but I don't think in the last 3 races, let's say, where Red Bull have not got pole position, I don't think they really had the car, or as good of a car for pole as Ferrari did. So yeah, I think this weekend definitely represents a better chance for them. And yeah, if I was to pick a car that I'd want to be driving in this weekend, it would definitely be the Red Bull. And it's great position Red Bull are in when it comes to the championship, because effectively, now that they have a pretty good lead now over Charles Leclerc with both drivers in the championship, or at least with Verstappen to Leclerc, first to third, and have an 80-point lead in the Constructors. Now, they I mean, they know Ferrari, are on the back foot massively and are pretty prone to mistakes at the moment, as we've seen plenty of times. So they know that if they can pressure Ferrari into a couple more big mistakes, that the championship effectively then will be finished. So Red Bull, yeah, they're in an absolutely fantastic position. In terms of the fight between Verstappen and Perez, I don't think Perez will keep up his record of the last 2 races of being ahead of Verstappen in qualifying. I just don't think that's going to happen. If you look at Sergio's history here in Canada, I mean, obviously he did finish on the podium here for Sauber in 2012, which amazing to think that was 10 years ago, honestly, that podium in Canada and that season as well. But if you look at his history around this track, it's not the greatest. It's definitely not as great as Baku or even Monaco, to be honest, in terms of his results. Had that podium in 2012, but really since then, he's only had like a couple decent points finishes here. What was it? 5th in 2017. And I think the only other one he had that was a pretty decent result was maybe 2015, where he finished, maybe 7th or 8th, I'm not sure. But yeah, I wouldn't expect a massive amount from Perez. I mean, I would be probably more surprised if he was to get ahead of Max for a 3rd race in a row, let's say in qualifying this weekend. And I'd probably be more surprised, a lot more surprised than him out qualifying Max in Baku, where we've seen in the past with Checo, he's been so competitive. So yeah, I think Max will be the main man for Red Bull, and what I think will happen is probably Ferrari, as I'll get onto in a moment, as long as they don't cock things up, which I know is basically their nature to do. I think Ferrari will probably have the better car for qualifying, as we have seen so far this season. But not just that, I think also the track layout, I think, and the shortness of the track, even though it's a bit more power-centric and straight-line speed-centric, I think I think Ferrari have enough in qualifying to get pole position and should be just about the quicker team over Red Bull. But what I see happening with Red Bull is probably Verstappen, say, putting it on the front row, a 10th or so behind Leclerc, and then in the race, all they need to do, if that is the situation, which I can absolutely see happening, a Leclerc Verstappen front row with Leclerc ahead of Verstappen on the grid. If that is the case, then what they need to do is essentially exactly what Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes did to Sebastian Vettel in the Ferrari in 2019, which is, for the first stint, just, manage things, sit behind, and then when the pit stop phase comes, which will probably be this weekend, with them bringing, I think, the 3 softest compounds, we're probably going to get pit stops here between lap 20 and 25, I would say, probably. Maybe lap 30 at the absolute latest for the drivers, certainly at the front of the field. Yeah, like I said, essentially what they're going to do is just look after things, and then when the first round and probably only round of pit stops comes, then really apply pressure and try and force Ferrari, obviously, into a mistake, but force them into a mistake by forcing them to make a decision between doing one thing or the other, because we've seen in plenty of instances that Ferrari, when they are forced into that type of situation, that they end up choosing an option that is the worst of them all and you thought wasn't even possible. So I think Red Bull, I mean, they don't, that's also, I think, with Red Bull this weekend, a great thing for them is that they don't, because of the position they're in the championship, they don't necessarily have to win this weekend. There's not that feeling that, we have to do well, we have to beat Ferrari, like maybe they had, say, a month ago, that they had to beat Ferrari because they were still behind in the standings. But yeah, I think, Red Bull will be fine. And I'm sure that coming away from this Grand Prix, if they don't win, they will be very close to victory, and they will give Ferrari a pretty good fight for that win, as long as the Ferraris do actually this time remain in the race for the full race distance, which of course is 70 laps. So yeah, Red Bull I think will be absolutely fine. And if I was to pick a team to win this Grand Prix this weekend, it would absolutely be Red Bull. Yeah, I think they'll be definitely in the race. I think they'll be the fastest car out there. Whether they'll be able to use it or utilise that fully, though, we'll have to see what Ferrari can do in qualifying. Before I go on to Ferrari, though, let me just quickly get to this stat regarding Red Bull in Canada. The last win in Canada was in 2014 with Daniel Ricciardo. What a win that was. Obviously, massively aided by Mercedes having a double, I think was it ERS problem in that, or MG UK problem, I think it was, in that Grand Prix. And obviously Lewis Hamilton retired and Rosberg came through to the finish in second place. So was aided by luck, but still, that was her last win in Canada. Max Verstappen, despite, you know, coming into this weekend looking pretty good, and maybe you could argue the favourite to win, only has one podium out of 5 races in Canada, which is, yeah, a very surprisingly poor record considering that he's had pretty good pace here in the past. But we do have to remember that, I mean, the last time we came here in 2019, Red Bull were pretty slow. I think Red Bull were actually slower than Renault at that Grand Prix as well, at least in qualifying. So they've never really, up until probably this Grand Prix, this Canadian Grand Prix this weekend, they've never really had a car that has been that competitive for the Montreal circuit, really, since they were dominating Formula One back in 2013. So I think Verstappen is very likely to improve on that podium record. Obviously, in Baku, I pointed out that he had never had a podium in Baku, and then he goes and wins the race. Red Bull also won in Canada twice since 2010. The only other win was in 2013 with Sebastian Vettel. On that day, yeah, just simple domination as he won the race by, I think, a pit stops gap, which is quite short around here, but still about 15, 16 seconds it was in Sebastian's and Red Bull's favour. So now let's move on from them and go to Ferrari. And yeah, with that new technical directive, it's going to be very interesting to see where they're at this weekend and whether they have solutions setup-wise that can limit it enough that they don't have to raise the car by 10 millimeters. Because if they do, then it could be game over, not just for this weekend, but for the season. So yeah, tomorrow practice is a massive day for them. And like I said, it's going to be very interesting to see with all the teams because of the technical directive. It's going to be very interesting to see how they all get on tomorrow and whether there are certain teams that are bouncing quite a bit more than others. So hopefully, even though, yes, I've criticised Ferrari plenty in the last few weeks, and obviously my last video on the channel, which was a stream clip from Monday's stream that I uploaded on Tuesday. By the way, if you want to go watch that video in the description, you can. It's a video called, I think, how Ferrari have nearly cost Charles Leclerc the championship. Make sure to go watch it. Like I said, link below in the description box. But yeah, even though I've criticised them plenty in the last 2-3 weeks, I would be gutted if they lost a load of pace because of having to raise the car's ride height. I really would be gutted because at the end of the day, I don't have any favoritism towards a certain team. All I want is a competitive Grand Prix every weekend. I don't care who it's between. I just want a competitive Grand Prix. And if we get the possibility of a close, exciting fight between Ferrari and Red Bull removed this weekend because Ferrari are just bouncing a bit too much for the FIA's liking, then it would definitely ruin it for this weekend. But at the end of the day, if they do have to raise their car's ride height going into FP3, then it's their own fault. Can't blame the FIA or anyone else because the decision the FIA have took is a very sensible one. So, yeah, we'll see. And hopefully they, can get that sorted tomorrow in Friday practice in terms of car setup. And if they do get it sorted, I have to stress that despite what's happened in the last 3 Grand Prix and how it's just completely fallen apart at Ferrari, this weekend they still have a very quick car for this track. Like I said, in the first sector, they'll be very, very quick, and that'll set them up nicely for the rest of the lap, and will put them at least in a competitive position for pole position. It will be a close fight between Ferrari and Red Bull, and I can absolutely see it going either way in terms of who gets pole position, Verstappen or Leclerc, maybe even Perez. We'll see what happens with him. But yeah, they can absolutely get pole position this weekend, obviously with Charles Leclerc, but also Ferrari can win the Grand Prix this weekend. But with the way they've been performing as of late, I just don't know with this current form whether it's actually possible unless Red Bull suffer a similar fate to what Ferrari had in Baku in the Grand Prix. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, they've definitely got the pace as long as they don't have to raise their car by 10 millimeters. Charles Leclerc, I expect to be very quick here. I know he's only raced here twice in the past, but I think he's done decently well in the last couple of races here. He scored points for Sauber in 2018 and finished on the podium here in 2019, even though he wasn't that quick in the 2019 race. So, yeah, I think with Ferrari, I think they'll have the pace. But at the end of the day, what matters is can they win the race and can they start taking points off Red Bull. Most of me says that Red Bull just have too much and that Ferrari are just not good enough as a team to get the job done, I'm afraid. Yeah, it's such a shame because honestly, a few races ago, say back in Miami, I was very excited for this season ahead because I thought we were going to get a very close, exciting championship fight that would last at least until we got to the Asian swing, Singapore and Japan. But at the moment, with how Ferrari have just crumbled, it feels like it could be over very, very, very soon. So I really hope Ferrari can bounce back this weekend. But like I said, if Ferrari don't win this weekend and Max Verstappen wins the Grand Prix, then I believe, even though the championship gap between Max and Charles may even only go up by 6 points up to 40 points, because Red Bull are a better team than Ferrari, and Ferrari have blown a massive lead in the championship, I think if it does turn out that Verstappen wins this weekend with Leclerc second, or even worse, then I think the championship is over. Because even though there are so many races left, I just don't believe this team, Ferrari, can overturn that. So, yeah, this is practically their last chance, I would say. And that's how they've got to treat it within the team. They cannot, within the team, treat it as though, that they aren't in that bad of a position, because they are. Because Red Bull, given what's happened since the Australian Grand Prix, the last time Ferrari won a Grand Prix, given how Red Bull have performed, they cannot just be relaxed and calm about this, because they're in a dire situation when it comes to the championship. Who would have thought 2 months ago, after the Australian Grand Prix, would be in this position where Ferrari were clinging on by a thread to stay in the championship fight? I don't think anybody would have thought that was a possibility, but Ferrari, like I've said in the past, they have very special abilities and they showcase plenty of them on a regular basis, do the Scuderia. But yeah, hopefully this weekend we can see a fight back for the good of the championship and the good of the sport. I don't care, like I said, who wins the championship, couldn't care less. But yeah, hopefully a fight till the end if that is still possible. But let me get on to some stats regarding the Ferrari team. Decent history as of late here in Canada. The last win in Canada was in 2018 with Sebastian Vettel. Yes, obviously, like I said earlier, 2019, he should have got the win. He was robbed of the win in my view, and he did cross the line in first place, but he had it took away from him. So officially, the last win in Canada was in 2018. But Ferrari, when it comes to winning Canadian Grand Prix, have not got that great of a record, I'm afraid. Only one win since 2010, which was 12 years ago, and it was that win with Vettel in 2018. They've had a few podiums here in 2010, 2013, 2016, 2000, and obviously 18 with the win, and 2019 as well. They had double podium. They've had podiums here. That's not been a problem, but getting the win here in Canada has not been, despite having a pretty quick car a lot of the time here in Canada, getting the win has not been something that they've really been able to pull off. Obviously, you know, as we see with the stats, it's not something they've been able to pull off really that great in the last 12 years, but they've never really put it all together in a Grand Prix weekend here in Canada. They've always had the potential to be very quick here, and have actually showed some very good speed here in the past, and have definitely blown some races where they could have won. Obviously 2019, 2016 as well, where Vettel got into the lead and was very quick that weekend. That was probably one of Vettel's best weekends in his career, and he well, drove his heart out, but his team blew it for him with a very poor strategy decision. But yeah, we'll see what they can do in the race, but their race history definitely not as good as the Red Bull team, which is not really that big of a surprise, sadly. Now we'll move on from the top teams and go on to Mercedes. And yeah, Baku, good result considering, you know, how poor the weekend was. Really a lot poorer than we thought it would be. Obviously with the porpoising, the bad porpoising they suffered in Baku, it really did worsen things quite a bit more than we thought it would be in terms of how bad it was in Baku. We definitely, I think most people did not think they would be that competitive in Baku. But yeah, they were excessively bad in Baku for sure, and the porpoising did not help with the FIA's new technical directive. This team is going to be the team to watch when it comes to that, because if they are on Friday bouncing around like fuck, then they are going to suffer very badly this weekend, because I have to raise the ride height of the car, and then they will have to probably tour around in the absolute middle of the pack at best, because obviously raising the car's ride height is going to remove speed, and Mercedes haven't got that fast of a car anyway. So yeah, this is going to be a very tough weekend for Mercedes, even though they've been very competitive here in the past, of course, when they were a top team. This weekend, they're not going to be a top team, and this season, they are not really a top team. So yeah, it's going to be a very tough weekend for them, especially for this man. Obviously, he's had a great history here in Canada. One of the most successful drivers at the Canadian Grand Prix. I don't know, or I can't remember if he's the most successful driver at the Canadian Grand Prix. I forgot to go and look for that stat, comparing, you know, him against Michael Schumacher for wins around Montreal. I think Michael Schumacher has, if I am correct, Michael has 7 wins as well. Does Michael, I think, have around Montreal? So yeah, I don't think Lewis, obviously, will be able to break that record. If that is the case, that him and Michael Schumacher are both on 7, tied on 7 race wins in Canada, I don't think Lewis has a chance of breaking that record this weekend. But I do think we are going to see a much more accurate representation of Lewis's performance this season, in terms of, is he performing close enough to his potential? Because even though, yeah, in Monaco he wasn't great, in Baku I thought he did pretty well considering the way his car was behaving, but, you know, wasn't amazing. And obviously Barcelona was pretty quick, but just didn't get really the luck that he needed on that first lap, being hit by Kevin Magnussen on the first lap into turn 4. Yes, he's been out-qualified for the last 3 races, but we've seen even in his prime years, not his prime, but, you know, his prime in terms of results, that, in the past, when Bottas was his teammate, he was out-qualified in Barcelona, in Monaco, in Baku. Like, for example, in 2019, Bottas, I remember in Spain, out-qualified Hamilton by like half a second. Hamilton would go on to win the race, but it's not like we've seen Hamilton not be out-qualified or outpaced by a good teammate at those type of tracks before. So coming to this weekend, a track where he's rarely been beaten by his teammate. I think the only Grand Prix weekends where he's been beaten by his teammate in Canada were, was it 2018? But I think he had if I remember that weekend, he had some sort of engine problem, or he hadn't swapped to a new power unit yet at that point, I think, Hamilton, and just generally didn't have a great weekend. I think as well he had a brake problem as well, but still, was beaten that weekend. And then the only other weekends where I can think of where he was not, quite at it here in Montreal, considering his great success, were 2014, even though he had a couple goes to overtake Rosberg. Rosberg was definitely the faster driver in qualifying. And then I think 2011 as well, when Jenson Button won that Grand Prix. I think that's pretty much it. So he's rarely been beaten here. Obviously, George Russell is a fantastic driver. I believe Russell is going to be, in the future, one of the top drivers in Formula One for sure. And I think definitely is a future world champion. So this will be a good benchmark for Russell around a track where Lewis has dominated his teammates and, in general, the whole grid in the past. It'll be a great benchmark for Russell to see how good he really is compared to Lewis Hamilton. But in terms of Lewis Hamilton, if Russell does what he did in Baku, which is, clearly outpace him and outrace him, then I think then at that point, you'd have to definitely raise the question of, is Lewis mentally, as excited / committed about the future with this team and in Formula One? But also, is he performing well enough compared to what we know he can do? Obviously, he's not performing bad enough to be dropped or anything. That's an absurd thing to even think about. But the question would definitely be asked if he's beaten comprehensively this weekend by Russell, his teammate, as to whether he's maybe lost a bit of drive this season, which, wouldn't be necessarily a surprise because Mercedes have not been a midfield team or had a midfield car really since 2011. So wouldn't be surprised if he's lost a bit of motivation in there, considering the situation. But yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see how Lewis gets on this weekend. Hopefully, we'll see the old Lewis Hamilton return this weekend and be the best of the rest behind the two Ferraris and Red Bulls. But yeah, they'll be at best Mercedes, the third quickest team. But I would not be surprised at all if they weren't even that, because I think teams like AlphaTauri and Alpine, after what we saw in Baku, I think they'll be very fast here in Montreal. And if they have to raise their car, the Mercedes might be back to a similar situation to what we saw at Imola, where they're not even in the top 3-4 quickest cars at the track. Could be even 5th or 6th quickest for the overall grid, which would be quite embarrassing considering that, in Barcelona, it seemed as though they've taken a step forward, and then, if that was to happen this weekend, then essentially Mercedes have taken one step forward and then about 5 steps back if that does happen here in Montreal. But before I move on to McLaren, by the way, guys, I will come to you guys in the chat in a moment to read out your comments. So keep posting them in the live chat and I'll get to them in a few minutes' time. Just going to quickly get onto a couple stats regarding the Mercedes team. So Mercedes won the previous race here in Montreal in 2019 with Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton has won the Canadian Grand Prix 7 times since 2007. Obviously, 2007, he won it. That was his first win of his F1 career, and that was the 6th race of his F1 career as well. And then he won here in 2010, 2012, 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2019 as well. This has been one of his tracks in Formula One. And since 2010, Mercedes have won in Canada 4 times, being 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2019. All of Mercedes' wins here have been with Lewis Hamilton, none with Bottas or Rosberg. So, you know, even though they've not been that quick this season, their record here is pretty good. And for Lewis Hamilton, he is pretty good here, as we know from the past. So hopefully we can see some good performances from him, considering the pace of his car at this current moment. Now, before I come to you guys in the chat, I'm going to quickly just get on to McLaren. And obviously the last Grand Prix, a pretty good result considering the lack of speed in qualifying. The only thing they were really missing, as we've seen this season, they really are missing quite a bit of straight line speed. And that is a big problem for them right now. And yeah, Baku, pretty good result considering what the pace was like. Obviously, that was aided quite a bit by the 2 Ferraris retiring, because if it wasn't for that, then they probably would have only come away with 1 point as opposed to 6 points that they came away with. So, yeah, good result for them. But coming into this Grand Prix, I really don't see, unless it rains, I don't really see McLaren having that great of a weekend. The first sector, yeah, will be a pretty good first sector for them, as it will for teams like Ferrari and maybe, you know, a team like Alfa Romeo as well, because they excel more, I think, in the corners rather than fast corners or straights. But when it comes to Sector 2 and Sector 3, McLaren are going to struggle massively. We saw in Baku, and we've seen this since the Miami Grand Prix, that McLaren have by far the worst straight line speed out of any other team. This is not only due to the Mercedes power unit being about, I think, is it 10 kilometers an hour down on the Ferrari power unit, which is thought to be the best one on the grid in terms of power, but also McLaren are running a bit too much drag on their car, and they need to do essentially what Mercedes did in Miami, which is bring a couple new parts to cut the drag off, because we saw with Mercedes it definitely helped their performance in Miami, and since then it has helped their straight line speed showings in the speed traps and all. Even in Baku it helped, even though they still weren't that quick. If they didn't, you know, cut the drag off that they did in Miami, they probably would have been at the very bottom there with McLaren as well. So yeah, McLaren have got to make that improvement. No sign at the moment that they're going to be making that this weekend, but I don't think McLaren, you know, will be the slowest team this weekend. But I don't see them really, unless, say, Lando Norris can pull out an amazing performance in the McLaren, which would be a bit of a surprise, because Lando has only raced here once in the past in 2019 for McLaren, and it wasn't a great experience for him. He only did about 10 laps and then his car caught on fire. I don't really expect a great, great enough performance by any of the drivers to really push this team into a much better position than expected. So I think most likely you'll see both McLarens knocked out in Q2, probably around the positions they finished in qualifying in Baku. So, yeah, I don't think we're going to see a great weekend for McLaren. And really, not until, well, maybe Silverstone, are we going to see McLaren be a strongish team in the midfield. And definitely not until, say, Paul Ricard or the Hungaroring are we going to see McLaren back to what we saw in Monaco or at the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. They just don't have an overall package which can be, like it was in 2021, a car that can overall be quicker pretty much every circuit bar a couple on the calendar. They just don't have that. Their car is still very track specific at the moment. Hopefully they can cut some drag off sometime soon. But yeah, those are the top 4 teams, guys. Let me know in the chat what you think of what I've had to say, and let me know what do you think they're going to do this weekend. How do you think they'll get on this weekend in Canada? And I'll make sure to read out your comments in just a moment. Just want to say, Don't forget, guys, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, because I will be live plenty of times this weekend for the Canadian Grand Prix. Twice tomorrow, 3 times on Saturday, and twice on Sunday, and once on Monday for this Canadian Grand Prix weekend. The 2 streams tomorrow are Practice 1 and Practice 2 watch-alongs. The first practice stream, Practice 1, will be starting at 6:45 p.m. UK time, and then the Practice 2 watch-along is at 9:45 p.m. UK time. So make sure to come along to both of those to see how the cars get on, and to see not only how the general pace is, but whether certain teams are having extra porpoising problems that could cause them to suffer a horrible weekend by having to raise their floor. You can subscribe bottom right of the screen, like I think I've already said. And as well, don't forget to smash the like button, share this video and channel everywhere you can. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5. Now, let's get to your comments in chat. And a reminder, if I forget to read yours out, then just post it in the comments section instead, and I'll make sure to cover it on stream, probably at the end of this weekend or on Monday. So they are covered. Just want to first, though, read out a super chat that I've received from FEFE for €4.99, I believe it is, who says, "Keep up the great work. I hope the eye lasering went well." It did. It wasn't a laser eye surgery. It was I can't remember what they called it, but it was basically what they do is they put like a fake lens into your eye, and it creates, you know, the vision that you would have obviously if you wore glasses. It's the same lenses that I had with my glasses, but instead they insert it into my eye. Almost like permanent contact lenses, I guess you could call it. But yeah, went very, very well. A lot better than I thought it would, and the experience was a lot better than I thought it would. And yeah, I've been out a few times. I've returned to my part-time job that I do like a couple days a week, and I can see amazingly clearly. So yeah, I'm very, very happy about it. Thank you very much. And goes on to say, a little super chat for your dedication to the channel and the F1 breakdowns. Keep it up. Thank you very much. And yeah, very happy with the surgery I had, and very happy to be covering the races again on a consistent basis. And between now and the end of July, we have got plenty heading your way, guys, in terms of content. Obviously 4 races next month. The next Grand Prix after this is the British Grand Prix, and then it's the Austrian Grand Prix with the return of the sprint, and then the French Grand Prix, and then the Hungarian Grand Prix. So yeah, plenty coming your way. And also, just to let you guys know, I'm not going to announce this yet until probably Sunday night at the earliest, which will be towards the end of my race watch along / reaction stream. Also, that's one thing to announce, is this weekend I am going to do a race reaction, but it's going to be as a part of my race watch along because of the lateness of the race watch along taking place, obviously because of the timing of the race. So I will be doing a race reaction, but it'll be included in the race watch along as opposed to me stopping the stream and going live again with a new one. But yeah, on Sunday night probably, and also I'll probably announce this on Monday as well, that from the British Grand Prix on, there is going to be a difference in schedule again when it comes to Fridays. So, like I said, I'm going to get onto that later this weekend. And the, the change I'm going to make is a pretty sensible one. But this weekend, I am covering all the sessions as normal. Anyway, let's get onto the comments. Paul James Squibbs says, I'm liking this new regular content enthusiasm coming out of this channel these days. My go-to F1 YouTube channel now. Thank you very much for that. And I mean, yeah, in terms of consistent content on this channel, that's not really been a thing since 2019. Obviously 2020 I was emotionally in a difficult place for most of that year, so I wasn't really in a position to be doing content. Obviously did content last year, but I only stuck to the race weekends because I wasn't ready really to come back and do a full schedule. But now with my life in a much better place and my life feeling as though it's in order, I am now going to pretty much return to the schedule I had from 2019, or maybe not as much of the schedule I had in 2019, but I am going to basically include, I guess, if you were to compare my content this year to last year, what I'm going to do is include content in between races, which I've already started doing, obviously, from the last couple races, and that's going to be a common theme as the year goes on, especially when we get to the summer break and the post-season winter break. It's not like content is just going to stop on the channel and I won't be back until testing, in like 4 months after that. There will be content during the breaks as well. So yeah, that is coming your way. Evening, by the way, to McLaren F1 race, Dylan Forrestal, Count Blah, great to see you as well. And yeah, great to see everyone in the chat. Right, let's read out some F1 related comments. Count Blah says, funny how Red Bull now in the screw-em camp. When the tyre construction was changed about a decade ago, they lobbied to no end to get back the tyres that worked best for them. Well, at the end of the day, I mean, this is not just the case of Red Bull, this is the case of every team. You're going to lobby for regulations that suit your car the best, and it's up to the FIA to realise, that certain teams are going to do that. But also, the FIA do have a difficult position sometimes between having to look at, will it change to, say, tyre construction? Will it favour this team a bit too much? But is it also important to think of safety? And the reason they went back to the old tyre construction in 2013 was because of all of those tyre blowouts at Silverstone that year. So I think they got it right in 2013. But yeah, when it comes to all of the teams, they're all going to lobby for their own interests. They're basically all like political machines, all of the teams, at the end of the day. Paul James Squibb says they'll have to turn Hamilton's Merc into one of those self-raising funky Mexican gangster cars or pop it on monster truck wheels. Brabamol says, not great for a good competitive championship, but that's all they could do. Well, it's not over yet, but it's not looking great. Marco Sarr says Leclerc will take a penalty. I'm not sure he's taking one for this weekend unless I have missed some news. Let me have a look on Twitter quickly. Can't see anything in regards to penalty for this weekend. But yeah, Charles Leclerc, in terms of engine penalties, Charles Leclerc will have to start taking penalties very soon because he's used up a lot more power unit parts than Verstappen has for Red Bull. So that's also a big reason why I think the championship is mostly already won for Red Bull, is because they're in such a good position on pretty much every front. Drivers are more consistent. Obviously, I think Red Bull have probably the best driver, or they do have the best driver out of the four. Perez, Leclerc, Sainz, and of course Verstappen himself. With the new FIA technical directive, that's only going to benefit Red Bull. And despite the couple reliability problems earlier this season, it isn't actually going to affect them that bad. Paul James Squibbs, how bad is the porpoising on the Ferrari cars, he asks. I'd probably say it's like the second or third worst team they are when it comes to it. The difference is they don't... it doesn't affect their performance like it does Mercedes, which is a bit weird. With the Ferrari, it seems to... It affects their performance, no doubt about it, but it doesn't... Like with Mercedes, it also affects them in the corners, but it doesn't seem to to affect Ferrari in that way. So, yeah, Ferrari definitely... not having a great time when it comes to porpoising. Top show, Chassa cheers, says John Hawkins. Thank you for that. Hello, by the way, to G Walker in chat. Harrison K says, very interested to see how this FIA technical directive affects Ferrari. Could knock them back a bit. If so, looking even worse for them. I'm here for it. Well, if it does knock them back a bit to the point where they are not really able to fight Red Bull as well as they could do before, then I think you'd have to say pretty much the championship is wrapped up. And I know people would say, but Perez can still win the drivers, but we know Max is going to win that and going to be definitely the main Red Bull man still. Perez has had a great season, but Max is still better than Perez, and I think Max is absolutely the clear favourite for the Drivers' Championship at the moment. Sparky Pete says, every year F1 changed regs to slow down Merc since Red Bull is beating P3 or P4 by 1.3 seconds. I hope with fair play, same happens next year. Keep doing the great work. Thank you. Thanks for that. Just trying to read your comment again to really see what you meant by it. Yeah. I mean, it's true that it's not just for Mercedes. It happened with Red Bull back in the V8 days and also Ferrari back in the V10 days in the early 2000s. When a team starts dominating the FIA for the interests of competition, try to change the regulations to try and make things a bit more competitive, and I wouldn't even say fairer, because it's not really fair, is it, to punish a team for being better than other teams, and even, that much better than other teams. But yeah, they do it all the time, so I'm not surprised that it still happens to this day. Obviously, Mercedes were affected by that, by the cutting of the floor, weren't they, for 2021, which is really what gave us a championship fight and a great season in 2021, was that, because if they kept the same cars, Mercedes would have won it by an absolute mile again, and Hamilton would have been, coming into this season, 8-time world champion. Seirugara says, on the wins list, though, he could be in the top 5 by next year for all we know. And says, Max Verstappen will be top 20 all-time driver once the season ends. I think you're talking in regards to his wins, yeah. I think Max Verstappen, I think that was what it was. He equaled, was it Jim Clark for race wins? Let me quickly look. F1 race winners. Just trying to make sure that is correct. I'm pretty sure I saw that online. And yeah, so Max Verstappen is now tied for 9th for race wins with Jim Clark and Niki Lauda, which is amazing. And it's very scary, I have to say, because Verstappen, he's only 24. He's going to be turning 25 on the 30th of September, and he's already equaled Jim Clark and Niki Lauda for race wins. I know, obviously, Jim Clark, back in the day when he was racing, they only did at best half the amount of races that they do now in F1 in a season, and with Niki Lauda they did about a quarter less per season in terms of races. So we do have to remember that. I mean, Jim Clark, if you look at his race win record compared to the amount of races he did, it was absolutely amazing. So yeah, it's not totally fair to look at just race win numbers, but like I said, it is quite terrifying for the rest of the field that he's already got, that many wins at 24 years old. I mean, he's only 7 wins away from Fernando Alonso's 32, and he could equal Alonso, if not beat Alonso, to 6th in the all-time drivers winners list, race wins, by the end of the season. And then he's only got another, if he does beat Alonso by, say, 1, he's only got then another 8 wins to go until he equals Senna. It's absolutely incredible. And I think absolutely People may disagree with me, but from what I've seen of Verstappen so far in his F1 career, and I've said this plenty of times, by the way, because of his talent and what he's done so far in his career, Max Verstappen absolutely has the ability to go down as the greatest driver of all time. Will he actually become the greatest driver of all time? We have to wait and see. It's purely down to what happens in the future, but he definitely has the talent to become that. I mean, he has still got another, 78 wins to go to equal Lewis Hamilton, and obviously Hamilton hasn't finished his F1 career yet. But yeah, Verstappen, if he can remain in a top team like he is now, a team that can win championships for a long time, then Max is going to do very well in his F1 career. Go back to the Mercedes pictures quickly, and I'll keep reading some more comments. Let's see if I can find some more. Sparky Pete says he might pass most of Schumacher's records, but I don't know about Lewis Hamilton's records. Either second or third best ever is great. I mean, yeah, if Verstappen doesn't end up being the greatest of all time, that doesn't mean his career's been a failure or anything. But I think, given how competitive he is, and like I said, the amount of talent he has, and he knows how good he is, I think he would be disappointed if he couldn't at least get close to Hamilton when it comes to titles, race wins, pole positions. Count Blast says F1 won't stop trying to stick it to Merc. Mate, lol, Merc just has to be better. Ferrari can stick it to themselves, and Red Bull are both good enough and slimy enough to be okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, when it comes to Mercedes, obviously they campaigned to the FIA for a better solution to the porpoising to make it safer, and it has backfired on them, because this is now going to mean that they're going to be potentially worse off because of this new technical directive. So yeah, not great for them. But like Count Blast said in the chat, it's their fault, and they need to improve their floor design for it to stop happening. And also, what was I going to say? I was going to say something, I think, as a Sparky Pete was saying earlier on in the chat as well, about how, you know, the FIA always try to slow down certain teams when they get a bit too good. Or he was saying, I think, in regards to Mercedes, which obviously they've tried a couple of times with them. I mean, I have no doubt if Red Bull start dominating, that the FIA will look to make things a bit more competitive as soon as they can. My hope is that we won't see any new regulations until 2026, when I know they've already got planned a new set of regulations to make the cars a lot more sustainable, electrified, and probably there'll be a revision of the technical aspects of the car in terms of design. So I'm hoping that is the next set of regulations we'll get. Because what happens is, in Formula One, for anyone obviously who's new to the sport and doesn't really know, the longer you leave it without a change in the regulations, eventually, and this is what we saw last year and in 2020, the field gets closer and closer and closer. And by the end of that cycle, it's a lot closer than it was at the start. I mean, if you look at, for example, the previous era, which was from 2017 to 2021, in 2017... Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull were miles ahead of everyone else, especially Mercedes and Ferrari. They were miles ahead of everyone else. But by 2020, I mean, Mercedes were still miles ahead of everyone else, but Ferrari were now a midfield team, and then Red Bull were second quickest, but not by that much. And then right behind them, you had a very competitive, upper midfield of Racing Point, McLaren, Renault, Ferrari, AlphaTauri, and there were some races where Red Bull would fall back and those other teams would have some glory for themselves. So yeah, hopefully they can leave the regulations alone. Obviously, I know, before anyone says, in 2019 there was a new set of regulations, but they barely made a difference. They just simplified the aero slightly. That's all they did, but it didn't really help the situation when it came to following another car in the dirty air. Let's see if we can find some other comments. Jan Sargent, easy Ferrari 1-2. Charles will finish the championship. Will win the championship and Sainz second. Well, obviously, we have a very enthusiastic Ferrari fan in the chat. Chris says, I will take any odds of a double Ferrari DNF, please. And let's see if I can find any other comments that I've not covered yet. And certainly from people I haven't answered from. I gotta read this out. Paul James Squibb says, I think you might have a dyslexic keyboard, Jan. It keeps putting Ferrari when you're trying to type Red Bull. Oh, that's good. Harrison K says, I have a feeling this FIA technical directive takes a bit of pace from Ferrari. No one talked much about it, but they had serious porpoising in Baku. We shall see. Yeah, that is one thing that people didn't really cover. And I think it's because Mercedes was so excessively bad when it came to it that people only thought they were the main team that were having those problems. And yeah, Ferrari also were having really bad porpoising down the main straight. I mean, Carlos Sainz, I think there was a clip online of him bouncing, and it was quite horrific how bad it was. So my hope, fingers crossed, is that it won't affect them as much as I'm fearing. But if it does affect them as much as I'm fearing, then I think really it's game over when it comes to the fight this weekend for victory, because Red Bull have a lot less porpoising than Ferrari do. That's been the case all season. So if Ferrari have to raise their car's ride height, then like I said, it's game over. And at the end of the day, if that does happen, we can't be sitting here and going, oh, FIA, you've, ruined the race, you've ruined the spectacle, now it's going to be one team dominating. At the end of the day, that's not their fault, it's the team's fault. So, yeah. Let's get on to some other comments here. I'm going to try and read out a few more, and then we'll get to the other teams, because I don't want to leave me, getting to the other teams too long. Manj Sher says, hi all, Niagara Falls, Ontario, leaving for Montreal in 2 hours for the F1. Woo! I got family in the area, so win-win. That's great for you. That really, really is. And hopefully you have a great time there. I know that the crowds there are pretty good, and it is a pretty, amongst not just the drivers, but I think the F1 community, it's a pretty popular Grand Prix. And like I said, when it comes to the fans, they're pretty good for F1. So yeah, hopefully you have a good time, and it's a pretty nice area as well where the track's at. So yeah, hopefully you have a nice time in Montreal. Joseph Finley says, Lewis is a phony. He's had the best car for the past 7 years. George drives it one race and was a few laps of winning. Lewis is good. He's not great. Funny, Mr. Diversity cannot drive diverse at all. Well, I think we know exactly where that comment is coming from in terms of the sentiment. That comment honestly could not be more, disliking of Lewis Hamilton. I mean, you don't have to like him. If you don't like him, that's absolutely fine. But yeah, to that extent, that's a bit excessive, I would say. But anyway, Leandra, have I spoken up Russell yet? Technically, yeah, I have. But yeah, Russell having a great season, and like I said, because of how great Hamilton is here in Canada and has been in the past, it'll be intriguing to see how great Russell can do this weekend. Because if he can beat Hamilton this weekend on merit, then I think it proves just how great Russell is and how great of a season he is having. But now let's go on to the rest of the midfield teams, and we'll start with Alpine. Great Grand Prix, honestly. I think they had in Baku 7th and 10th, overtook Alfa Romeo in the Constructors' Championship, and now set their sights on McLaren ahead of them, 18 points ahead of them in the championship. And I think, considering McLaren, for the next few races, certainly are not going to have that quick of a car, I think Alpine have got a good chance of closing that gap down to McLaren. This weekend, they should be quick. Both drivers also do have a pretty good history around here in terms of performance. Fernando Alonso won here for Renault, obviously in 2006. Also have podiums here in 2010 and 13. A lot of the time, though, since that win in 2006, he's not had that great of a car to be like properly competitive for whatever the top result he can get in whatever part of the race he's in, whether it's midfield or fighting at the front. Obviously, in 2007, he started on the front row and had a horrible race, but in the days where he was at Ferrari, he always put in a very good performance, but he really, I think, outdrove his own car and put that Ferrari in positions that it really didn't deserve to be in at the Canadian Grand Prix. He could have won in 2010 and 2012 and 2013 had things, more so gone his way, and then, and if the Ferrari car had been a bit quicker for him, and obviously for McLaren when he went to the McLaren team, still performed well around here, but just didn't really have a car quick enough to really get, the best result realistically he could have got. So I think Alonso, as long as the Alpine can be good enough through the corners with the straight line speed we saw in Baku, I have no doubt that Alonso and Alpine will be very quick this weekend in Montreal. And also Esteban Ocon, in the only 2 Canadian Grand Prix he's done here, has been pretty good. The last time he raced here was 2018, and he finished 9th for Force India. In 2017, though, obviously we had that famous altercation between him and Perez. He finished 6th that day, only just behind Perez. He felt, though, after that Grand Prix, that if Perez had let him through, obviously his teammate, that he could have had a go at Ricciardo and got on the podium. So watch out for Ocon as well, because I think he'll be pretty competitive too. But yeah, Alpine, really, since that Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, they've been very competitive. Obviously, Miami didn't get the best result they could have got, but still got some decent points. Obviously, Spain was a great result, Monaco a great result, and Baku a great result. So Alpine really moving forward this season. And to be honest, I hope they do get a good result, strong result this weekend, because I would like to see a fight in the Constructors' Championship between them and McLaren for 4th, which is a pretty important position. The top honours for the, I guess, the real midfield. I mean, Mercedes in 3rd, they are a midfield team, but at times this season they've transcended into a front-running-ish team. So that's why they're so far ahead of the Constructors' Championship. They're kind of in between Mercedes being a midfield team and a top team in terms of the championship standings in regards to the rest of the midfield behind them. So, yeah, it would be nice to see a good fight between McLaren and Alpine for 4th in the championship. So hopefully a good weekend is on the cards for Alpine, and I think it is for the French team. Now let's go on to Alfa Romeo. It'll be curious once again with this team to see whether their lack of performance in the last 2 races continues, and whether it really is down to street circuits, just them not going well on street circuits and being better for the purpose-built racetracks. Of course, when we go to Silverstone in 2 weeks, we'll be back to a purpose-built racetrack. But yeah, I don't really know what to make of this team again coming into this Grand Prix, because even though in the last 2 races they've not been that good, they still have, we know, a good car in there. We saw it before the Monaco Grand Prix. They were one of the best midfield teams, and then suddenly they've just dropped off the edge of a cliff. Like I said, it might be down to just street circuits and the way the car handles, or maybe bumpier circuits. I don't know, but yeah, we'll see what happens this weekend. I can't really say much more than that. Zhou Guanyu obviously had a very unlucky Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Was heading for a points finish, but then his car failed him. Or the Ferrari engine especially failed him in Baku. I don't expect him to be that competitive this weekend because he's never raced in Canada before. So, yeah, I think he'll be pretty much for the first 2 to 3 sessions just learning how this track works in reality. Valtteri Bottas, though, we know from the past has been very good here. In his first ever Canadian Grand Prix 9 years ago for Williams in 2013, he put it third on the grid here in a wet session. So we know he's got great performance here. Also in other years, he's qualified very well here. I think 4th as well 2 other times for the Williams team. And for Mercedes, has been pretty quick here, except for the last time we came here in 2019 where he was actually pretty slow. But in the previous couple times for the Mercedes team, he was pretty quick, was Valtteri. So be interesting to see whether he can have a better weekend. Alfa Romeo are actually, if I just go to... let me just find this bit of news quickly, if I can. Yeah, so Valtteri Bottas, what I was trying to say, he had like some major car issue in Baku, and that's why Valtteri was so slow. And yeah, Bottas suspects something fundamentally wrong with this car in Baku, and he expects Alfa Romeo will discover something was wrong with his car during the Grand Prix, as his lap times in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix were slower than those of the Williams drivers at the end of the race. And yeah, he just was at a loss for, why he was so slow that weekend, especially compared to teammate Zhou Guanyu. So yeah, hopefully they can find that issue, and hopefully he can be returned to a more competitive state, because what we saw in Baku was alarmingly bad from his end, which I was hoping wasn't down to him, and it looks as though it was actually not down to him, which is, I guess, a good thing to see that, he is still performing at a decent or good level in 2022. But with Alfa Romeo, yeah, I really don't know where they'll be this weekend. We'll just have to see when practice comes around. With Haas F1, though, we know where they'll be. They'll be probably near the back. Yeah, since they've not upgraded their car, at the Spanish Grand Prix, where everyone else did, and they didn't because they're saving it for the French Grand Prix, which is still another month away, or just over a month away. This team is now slipped back, really, to being one of the 2 or 3 slowest teams on the grid. And in Canada, I don't really see them having a great weekend. Kevin Magnussen, who is the number 1 of the team, has never really had a great history here. So I don't really see him doing much this weekend. And for Mick Schumacher, he's never raced here before. And with the poor form he's been in, I would honestly say there's 0 expectations for him this weekend. And if he doesn't finish in the points this weekend, then I'm not that bothered. As long as he's not alarmingly bad and alarmingly much slower like he was in Baku than his teammate, then I think, honestly, whatever he does other than that is fine. But, yeah, Haas F1, I think, really, like I said in Baku, I think their decision to not bring any upgrades to the car back in Barcelona, which was, 4 weeks ago now, was the wrong decision, because now they are paying for it massively, and the great position they were in the championship after about 3-4 races has now completely fallen away, and now they're tied on points with Aston Martin for 8th and 9th in the championship, so they're almost second last, and seemingly have almost fallen back to where they were last year. So yeah, very poor for Haas, and yeah, I don't think they'll be that competitive this weekend. This car just doesn't really have any real strengths at the moment compared to any other cars, because, like I said, of the lack of development. So, yeah, not expecting much this weekend, which is a shame. But now we'll go on to AlphaTauri, and AlphaTauri this weekend, and I'll just quickly update this picture because it's not quite adjusted correctly. So there you go. Yeah, AlphaTauri obviously had a great Grand Prix in Baku, and it could have been more. It really could have been, should have been more. Yuki Tsunoda, of course, had to drop out the points because of a DRS issue. That cost them an extra 8 points, even though they still came away with 10 points. So think of just how great they would find them, a great of a position they would find themselves in had it not been for that. They'd only be about 5-6 points behind Alfa Romeo, and I think 10 points away from Alpine in 5th. So, yeah, AlphaTauri were really heading for a great result there, but just didn't end up happening for them because of that. And really, they have had some bad luck this season that's cost them some good points and definitely a better position in the Constructors' Championship. But this weekend, I think they'll keep up the pace they showed in Baku. They have good straight line speed, as we saw in Baku, and we've seen that all the season long. The two Red Bull-owned teams, just in a straight line, are pretty quick, and in Canada, of course, very, very important that is. So yeah, I think they'll be very competitive. Hopefully, Yuki Tsunoda, in his first time in Montreal, can cope well with this track. Hopefully, no big crashes, which is definitely common for people who have not raced here in the past. And for Pierre Gasly, obviously the last time he raced here was an embarrassing Grand Prix for him, where he finished in 8th place, but he was miles off the pace compared to where his teammate was, and ended up, putting in quite a bad performance in that Canadian Grand Prix. So hopefully doesn't, replicate anything like that this weekend, and I don't think he will, because obviously he has moved on and improved a lot since 2019, and I think he will be pretty competitive this weekend. And probably in the top 8 on the grid in qualifying. Maybe up in 5th and 6th. We'll have to see in qualifying. But I think Gasly will be very, very good this weekend. And it seems as though AlphaTauri, even though in Barcelona when they brought, I think, upgrades to their car, they didn't seem to really be that quick. Since then, they have been definitely quicker than what we saw before the Spanish Grand Prix. So I think those upgrades have eventually started working for them, and they've understood how to really get the best out of their car now. So good to see them in a more competitive state. Now go on to Aston Martin. They've been great the last few races, but only really because of this man, Sebastian Vettel. What a season he's having. Definitely one of the top few drivers on the grid right now in terms of his own performances. He finished 6th in Baku last weekend, and that was an amazing performance, and that was all despite him going down the escape road at turn 3 and spinning his car around and losing probably 5 or 6 seconds. So he could have finished probably in 5th place had it not been for that. So yeah, great performance by Vettel, great performance this season, and considering how great he's been here in the past in Canada, I think he'll be, again, very, very competitive. Of course, the last 2 Canadian Grand Prix, he's crossed the line in 1st place, but only won one of them. And also, he won here in 2013. And I think his first Canadian Grand Prix here in 2008, actually finishing the points for Toro Rosso in 8th place. So he's always been very competitive here in Canada. Not always every single Canadian Grand Prix been performing at an amazingly high level, but he's always been very competitive here in Canada. So, I think definitely this weekend he'll be in the top 10, probably sneak into about 9th or 10th in qualifying, and then as long as he can, cope well with the conditions, whatever the conditions are, whether it's extreme heat or the wet or whatever, he should be able to progress his way up the field, and if there are some retirements ahead of him, then he can finish maybe in the top 8 of the Canadian Grand Prix, which would be a very good result for him, and would probably take Aston Martin up to 8th in the Constructors' Championship. For Lance Stroll, obviously, it's his home Grand Prix. His last home Grand Prix here in 2019, he put in very good performance, finishing 9th in that Grand Prix. And his pace as well was very impressive for what was Racing Point at the time. And hopefully we get something similar. Just hopefully this time with Lance, a qualifying result that is competitive enough. You know, a top 13 on the grid would be, I think, nice for the team. If he gets knocked out, for example, in Q1 again, then he's not really giving himself that great of a chance to finish in the points. I know sometimes here in the past you can have, here in Canada, plenty of retirements, and even if you start low down on the grid, you can still find yourself getting a few points, but you don't want to be giving yourself too much work here in Canada, because at the end of the day, it is still a street circuit, and overtaking is still hard here in Montreal to a certain extent. So hopefully can have a decent enough qualifying. But yeah, Sebastian Vettel, what a season he's having, and it will continue for sure in Canada this weekend. And finally, it is the Williams team, and Alex Albon had a decent weekend here, I think, in 2019, his only Canadian Grand Prix, but it had it ruined by, I think, having a puncture on the first lap. So, yeah, wasn't really able to show any real good pace on the Sunday, but I think because of the shortened lap and the closer gaps there'll be between all the cars, I think he could probably have a good chance of getting out of Q1 and into Q2. Hopefully, yeah, he can get into Q2, but realistically, he's not going to finish in the points. Latifi, obviously, it's his home race, but I don't think the Canadian crowd really care that much at all about Nicholas Latifi, because he is by far the worst driver on the grid this season. And yeah, he's heading absolutely for the exit door in Formula 1. But yeah, Williams still going to be at the back. We did have, though, have some news in regards to Williams, which was that they are bringing, I think, a big upgrade package probably to the next Grand Prix at Silverstone. Try and cut some of the deficit to the midfield, which is good, because after, Albon had a couple points finishes, I was worried that they were just, that was going to be it for them and they were just going to fall away. But hopefully that won't happen quite yet. But keep your comments coming in the chat, guys, and I'll make sure to read out a few more as we come towards the end of this stream. I'll read out a few more comments probably, and then come to the end. Let's see if I can find some people I've not read out comments from yet. By the way, hello, Aline. No problem that you're late. Absolutely no problem at all. Bruce Segal says, in Montreal right now, thunderstorm taking refuge in a cafe. I have seen a forecast for rain possibly on Sunday, but I'm not gonna hype you guys too much for that, because I don't want to spoil anything if, it ends up not happening. But a wet Canadian Grand Prix would certainly be a very exciting one. Let's see if there's any others here. The Human Pokedex, or Pokedex, says, that's Merc done now. Then, wait for 2023. Well, to be honest, I think they were pretty close to being in that position where they were, done for the season in terms of what they could get out of this season. I mean, I think they pretty much gave up on the championship after the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, where Lewis Hamilton couldn't even finish in the points, stuck in traffic for the whole race. But, yeah. To be honest, I mean, I think they are still bringing an upgrade for the British Grand Prix, but if that upgrade doesn't work that well and they're still miles behind Ferrari and Red Bull, then I would just give up any sort of development for this season and just focus entirely on 2023 and just try and make a better car for that set of regs. Like I said, I think they will, or not set of regs, that, the next season in 2023. Like I said, though, from the previous Grand Prix, I do think they will be back next season with a much better car and be fighting for the championship. But, yeah, this season, it's already finito. Harrison K says, Alpine has very little porpoising. Depending on how things go, I could see them being more competitive again. We shall see. Yeah, true, Alpine don't have... Well, they do have porpoising for sure, but they just don't have it as badly as other teams. I think AlphaTauri are also another team like Mercedes and Ferrari that have that quite poorly, that problem. Leandro says this is the best pre-race review, or I guess you mean preview so far. I like the way he manages to discuss about each other one by one, driver one by one. Thank you for that. And yeah, in terms of the way I do things, that's just the way I am. I mean, I know other people do previews where they'll only mention certain teams and drivers, and the other teams and drivers they don't really talk about. But I like to cover all bases so everyone knows what my thoughts are regarding everyone going into the Grand Prix. Because, you know, if you don't cover everyone, then that person you don't cover, or the team you don't really cover, could end up being the team that causes a massive surprise. So, yeah. I mean, the only teams or drivers I don't really cover sometimes is when it gets to a point where, like, a team gets so far behind pace-wise to other teams that there's just no point talking about them. Like last year, for example, with Haas, I never really talked about them at all because they were so bad and they weren't even trying to be good. So there was no point even talking about them. And also, I did that with Williams, didn't I, in 2019? They were so bad that year that I did the same with them. It was just like, no, not talking about them because they're just so obviously terrible. I'll read out this final comment, though, from Jose Vizcaino, I think it is, who asks, can Sainz improve? He hadn't the race pace in Baku. Leclerc can't fight alone against the two Red Bulls. I think with Sainz, he's only going to really be fighting with the Red Bulls at tracks where historically he's done pretty well. I mean, the Barcelona Grand Prix was very disappointing. You know, the mistake he made and the lack of pace he had when he came back from that. Very disappointing, to be honest. But, I mean, Monaco, you know, he did very well. He's always, though, been very competitive in Monaco, so that's not really a surprise that he was, you know, right there with the Red Bulls at the very least. Baku, I mean, he's never historically been that quick in Baku, so it wasn't really that big of a surprise. In Canada, also, Carlos has never really been that quick. I mean, the next track on the calendar really I can think of that he has had decent pace around in the past is Silverstone, which of course is the next Grand Prix. So we'll see how he does there. Also, Paul Ricard, he's been pretty quick there. And definitely Hungaroring, the Hungarian Grand Prix track, he's been very good there in the past. I remember him finishing 5th there for McLaren in 2019. Did Sainz and last year finish 3rd for Ferrari, even though they were, you know, not that quick. So, yeah, I think there are tracks coming up where Carlos will be quick, but he's only gonna be competitive with the Red Bulls and Ferraris at those type of circuits, or the Red Bulls, sorry, at those type of circuits. Obviously, he's driving for Ferrari. Jesus fucking Christ. He's only going to be competitive with the Red Bulls at those circuits where he, you know, naturally just drives better at. Because I just don't think Carlos at the moment is at a level where he can, like his teammate Leclerc, be consistently, race after race, no matter the circuit, right there with his rivals. I just don't think Carlos is at that level yet. Hopefully gets there, but he's not at that level yet. But that is, guys, it for your preview for this weekend's 2022 Canadian Grand Prix. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and hopefully for this weekend you will join me for the content heading your way. So, if you want to see, by the way, what my schedule is for this weekend in text form, if it's easier for you that way to keep up with what my schedule is, then make sure to go to my community tab on my homepage, and the second post down from on the community tab at the moment, you'll be able to see the schedule for the weekend and all the streams and all the start times for all the streams. I'll quickly read them out to you. So, tomorrow I'll be live twice. Firstly, practice 1 watch along at 6:45 PM UK time. Then live again at 9:45 PM UK time for the practice 2 watch along for the Canadian Grand Prix. And then on Saturday, I'll be live 3 times. Firstly, at 3 PM UK time for a qualifying preview where we'll go through all the teams and how they did in practice on Friday, the data, stats, all of that stuff. Also, we'll look at porpoising as well to see what teams had it more than others and whether there is a likelihood that those teams will have to raise their ride heights. So that'll be 3 p.m. UK time on Saturday afternoon, obviously my time. And then 5:45 p.m. UK time on Saturday night will be the practice 3 watch along. And then at 8:30 p.m. UK time will be the qualifying watch along for the 2022 Canadian Grand Prix. And then on Sunday, only 2 streams. The first one being the race preview for the Grand Prix at 4 p.m. UK time. And then the race watch along will start at 6:30 p.m. UK time on Sunday evening. And what that stream is going to be, it's going to be, like I said, a bit different to your normal race watch along. What I'm going to do is do the race watch along part, and then as soon as the race finishes, I'm going to go into what would be normally a separate stream, being the race reaction straight away. So yeah, that's what's going to happen for the race watch along. So the race watch along is probably going to go on for an extra hour compared to normal, but yeah, the race watch along will be starting at 6:30 p.m. UK time, and then probably won't finish until 10:30 p.m. UK time by the time I'm done with my reaction to what happened in Canada. And I've read out all your comments and all of that. And then on Monday evening, I'm going to do a more in-depth review of the events of the Canadian Grand Prix at 8 p.m. UK time on Monday evening. And then if there's any main topics from that, I'll probably record a couple bits of the stream and upload those separately as stream clips, so you guys can that missed those parts of the stream can watch that back in those, you know, those stream clips. For example, the last video on the channel, which is in the description right now, that you can go watch, about how Ferrari have nearly thrown away Charles Leclerc, or whether they, you know, have nearly thrown away Charles Leclerc's championship hopes. That is a stream clip, and yeah, make sure to go watch that. Link below in the description for that. But what I've just, you know, read out to you, that is my full schedule for this weekend's Canadian Grand Prix. And hopefully, whether you're a subscriber or new to the channel, hopefully you can join me for that this weekend. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. And don't forget to smash the like button, share this video and channel everywhere you can. Don't forget to join the Discord server, link below in the description. And as well, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5 to keep up with my content here on YouTube. But guys, until Friday practice tomorrow and my watch-alongs for that, and for the Canadian Grand Prix weekend, it is fantastic to be back here in Montreal. Until then, guys, it has been me, ChazHD. Goodbye.